Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel, and today we're going to be going back into the 3rd gen Camaro. Don't mind, I might look like a mess right now, I just got off work. So we're on like the last 10% of this build as far as what I have planned for it to get it on the road. There will be changes down the road, but to just get it going, we're on like the last 10%. And I tell you what, it's been about the worst, not the worst, it could be a lot worse. It's been a rough last 10%. So we had the drive shaft debacle because my torque arm and cross member, hopefully you guys have seen that video. If you haven't, go ahead and check that out. One of my amps went bad on the stereo that I just installed. Had that warranted, got that reinstalled, and then the rear end, I just installed the parking brake cables. Ended up actually, when I cut the sheathing, ended up being too short. So when the car was squatted, the cables went in front of the sway bar end links, and basically when the car is squatted, now that it sits lower, it's actually like, it makes like an S around the sway bar end link, and it actually pulls the cables like in opposite directions. So unfortunately I don't think there's enough slack in there, so I just ordered another parking brake cable kit. Just done dealing with it. I'm just gonna make them longer and give them as much room as possible. So I'll be doing that. But today we're just doing a real quick video on the exhaust, which is another thing that has just been way too long in the making. So I'm doing a very short exhaust. You guys might have seen pictures on my Instagram or anything like that. I might have shown it in previous videos. So we just basically have we have true duals that come down, both go to the passenger side, and then I have pipes, M80 mufflers, straight through mufflers, and then just some turn downs that go right down where the tail shaft of the transmission is. Not worried. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're gonna smell exhaust fumes. It's not a big deal. This is how I want it. This is how I'm gonna do it. I've dynomatted the entire car. It's sealed pretty good. I'm not too worried about the exhaust fumes. I'm not just gonna be sitting in this thing at idle forever. This is how I want it. But I'm not originally from here. I'm from Nebraska. Well, I've been in the military for the last 8 years before this. Then I got into drag racing. And so now I'm in a state where we have no family, and I'm not a real social person except for the people I work with. I just don't care to be. I like to be by myself. But it causes an issue when it comes to things that I can't do, and the exhaust is one of the only things on the car that I specifically have not done. I've done everything else on this car, but I don't have a welder. I'm not that great at welding, and when it comes to this car, I like to do as good of a job as possible. Well, my old assistant crew chief was actually going to weld it up for me. I've seen him weld many different types of materials and some pretty crazy stuff, and he does a fantastic job. Well, when I contacted him, we were going to do it this one weekend. We both got busy. Next time I called him, turned out he moved back to Nebraska. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'll figure it out. Well, I had a couple other people I could call, you know, possibly, but instead I called the muffler shop down the street at Napa, and they actually told me that they couldn't do it if there weren't cats on it, or if they didn't install cats themselves. I was just like, well, that's not happening. I'm not doing that. So not going that route. And then there was a guy that I met. He's like his own backyard mechanic, does a lot of work, does a lot of mechanic work. And I talked to him, and he was going to do it, and he's the one that actually tacked it up. Well, he uses like Harbor Freight's smallest welder from like 15 years ago. It's all electric. And we'll just say that the tacks were, yeah. So I just sucked it up. I actually found a actual welding shop, and I took it to this guy and had him do it. It was a little bit more. It was around $200, but I don't care. I wanted it done right, and I'm gonna get it installed just so when we start up the car, it's good to go. But I am gonna do an exhaust wrap on it, and eventually I'll do the bottom part of my headers as well, because they are really close to my starter. But I will eventually end up wrapping the exhaust down to the muffler with the exhaust wrap, but I can't do that until it's on the car, I get it running, and then I also have to find a place where I can actually put some exhaust hangers, because the only hangers are in the back of the car, which this only goes to the transmission tail shaft. So that's another issue, but that's later on. For right now, it'll be, you know, the collector flange bolts that basically hold it in place until we get it running, and then I can find a good location to actually put a hanger, and then I'll have him weld some hangers on. But we're going to go ahead and get it installed, and then after I get the hangers welded on in a couple months, we'll get it wrapped. But we'll go ahead and get it installed. I'll show you the exhaust real quick. The guy had to, you know, cut the ugly tack welds off and all of that. And then there was the issue of it being the standard steel with the stainless steel mufflers. He wasn't 100% sure how it would go. He said he would test it, see how it went. It actually went really well. Got it all welded up, and I'm really happy with it. Let's go ahead and take a look, and then we'll get them installed. Sorry, I know it was a lot of conversation, but it's a pretty short video. So here's the exhaust. If anybody doesn't know, this is the dual Y pipe from Dyno Don. I run the Dyno Don headers, and they're some of the best ones for the third gens. As far as shorty headers, I mean, obviously you could go a little bit bigger when you get into long tube headers, but as far as shorty headers, they're some of the best ones you can choose. But this is the dual Y pipe. They have a standard Y pipe that comes to a union, but I wanted the true dual, and that comes with the piping all the way from here. It goes down and then it stops right here. And then I bought the pipes M80s and the turn downs. I believe they're pipes as well. But yeah, here's the collector flange mount, just 2 bolts. And then this weld was, you know, from Dyno or Don himself. And then here's the first one. He had to come in and grind all the old tacks off and everything, and that goes for all of them. They were, I don't know, probably a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch wide. They were some pretty big blobs, but I'm glad he was able to clean them up as best as possible, and got them fixed up nicely. And then here it has it's actually meant to be, you know, clamped on with an exhaust clamp. I did not want to run an exhaust clamp, so I'm really glad that he was able to weld this up, and it turned out really nicely. So he had to weld up those slots for the compression, but it actually turned out really nicely. I'm really happy with it. So maybe I'll post up a picture of what it looked like. I had them tacked up, and I test fitted them on the car before I had it fully welded up because I wanted to make sure everything was the right length. I had to cut the turn downs a little bit, and then had to, I think this one here was a cut to fit this one or this one, and I had to shorten it a little bit to make sure that these mufflers can sit next to each other. But this is basically what it'll look like underneath the car. So that's it. So Dyno Don dual Y pipe with the Dyno Don headers, and the pipes M80 mufflers with the turn downs. So now we'll go ahead and get it installed. The exhaust is in. Got my parking brake cables out. I'm working on those now, but figured I'd show you before I get the car back down before remembering. The exhaust is on. It sits nicely. The inside one is about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch lower than the outside one, which is fine. That's kind of how it's set up in here where the pipes actually run, where the heat shielding is. That's actually as high as both of them can go. I still gotta tweak this one. It's kind of aimed down a little bit. As you can see, it's not perfectly flush, but I do got them tightened up, and they're actually very sturdy. I gotta loosen this one a little bit to get the tip over here pushed up about half of an inch, but it's coming out really nicely. I know you can't really see it, but I did use lock washers up on the bolts. I will use Loctite once I do the final install, but I still have to basically find somewhere to weld a mounting bracket. Not that, I mean, they're pretty sturdy. This one's moves a little bit more than this one, just because it goes to the other side, but overall they're actually pretty dang sturdy. I'm really happy with it. I can't wait to get this thing fired up. But yeah, I'm currently working on the parking brake cables, since once I set the car down it was smashing. The cable one was getting smashed up above the torque arm, and then the other one came from here, went in between the sway bar right here where the old parking brake cable would go through that loop. Well, that doesn't work now with the sway bar end link, so I have to go further down and run it down here. So yeah, but
Other than that, exhaust is installed. I think it's a fairly nice fit. It's not going to be, you know, much lower than anything else on the car. So nice and flush. Can't wait to get it fired up and hear it. So that's it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and continue working on the parking brake cables. I just figured I'd give you guys a little bit of an update on the exhaust install and kind of the little things that I've been running into that I got to touch up and adjust and everything before we move on to the final stage. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below of your guys' thoughts, and as always, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time.